I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, the guest I'm about to announce made a couple of big, well, more than a couple, but a couple of big ones that come to mind. And one of the things he said more than a year ago is watch out for China. Look out for China. Watch what they're doing. They're really important in the world. What has China been doing? Building all these islands in the South China Sea. Another prediction he made was, Europe is eventually going to start pushing back on Islam, on whatever. What do we have going on now? In Europe is a big migration, invasion, whatever you want to call it, refugees flooding into Europe. And there's a big pushback coming now from the Nordic countries, especially even Germany, who at one point welcomed them and said, yeah, not so much. Who I'm talking about is Warren Pollock. Warren Pollock, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Great to be here, Greg.
Well, I know you got deep Wall Street experience. You did all kinds of stuff with hedge funds and trading and brokerages and things like that. You're a smart guy. You're also a friend of the channel, but I have a lot of friends I wouldn't put on. But you're a smart guy. I want to start with this chart that you sent me. You built this chart. And if you take a look here, here's post-World War II America, where we're, the Marshall Plan, we're rebuilding Europe and everything else. And this is just through the years from post-World War II all the way down to splat today. Could you explain this chart? It's a economic multiplier chart, and it looks like the economy isn't multiplying much right now if you look down here.
That's right. It's a difference between addition and multiplication. Now, the Federal Reserve, through QE, quantitative easing, has been adding money into the economy. But really, we as individuals multiply money through the economy through our productive activity. For example, if I took my money, my savings, and I put it into a factory, and that factory had a rate of return, then I'd be employing people, I would be buying subcomponents to be assembled into a finished product, and my money would be a vastly multiplied throughout the economy. And that is when you have a productive economy, a manufacturing economy, an agricultural economy, you have this vast multiplier. And what happens is over time, after World War II, when we had a monopoly on the productive capacity of the world, we stopped multiplying. We became lazy, and we're not even adding into the economy. We used all these tricks, and as we've used these tricks to sort of preserve our economic dominance, the multiplier has been getting smaller and smaller, and the money has been declining in its velocity over a period of time. We use a lot of tricks such as the housing boom, labor arbitrage through China, and now we're down desperate. We're printing money, yes, but we're just adding it into the system. And really, money, the velocity of money, economic activity is really now declining as savings is being stolen through zero and negative interest rates. And so if the government is printing money, borrowing money, it's doing so with an addition sign. It's not doing so with a multiplication sign. And no matter what the government prints, it cannot take that money and put it into productive economic activity. Simply, it doesn't exist anymore in the captured U.S. economy. Everything now is draw down, cut the pie smaller and into smaller and smaller pieces, come up with some scheme to, let's say, create welfare jobs through the TSA, and that none of that is accretive to the economy. It's just a burden which you have to pay every time you step on an airplane. It has nothing to do with security. It's a welfare type of a situation. We can create a job, but that job doesn't multiply through the economy. We created a job, and what it's doing is making things more expensive. And right now, everything in the U.S. economy is drawing down. You go to buy a car today, let's say you lease a car, and the sale price, the residual price of that car is determined the minute that you buy it. So as a consumer, everything is costing you 10 times more than it should when it comes to things which you purchase within the economy, within this captured economy. The automobiles, housing, medicine, education, everything is costing more, and you as a consumer have less and less purchasing power, and your activities cannot be multiplied anymore throughout the economy.
And just as an addendum, here's something from Fred. It came out, Ed here, Ed, but it's really a Fred chart. And this is the money velocity. And since, around 2000, it peaked just to 98 or something. and you could just see the money velocity just going down, down, down. And this is all the gimmicks that they were using. They knew the economy was sinking, so we had the internet boom, and then the housing boom, and then now we're the money velocity is down. In the tank, it's down here. So the economy is slowing down. The headline is the economy is slowing down. We're looking at like deflation instead of inflation happening at the moment. Is that correct?
Right, correct. And I didn't look at that chart before, but that looks like a head and shoulders top, and it looks like we broke through that head and shoulders and are heading downwards. And everything in the economy is in a deflationary trend right now. And really, it boils down to the fact that you and I, as participants in a labor pool, have very little and diminishing value. And that's really going to be a crime against everyone that's elderly, everyone that is 50 years old, 40 years old. It's a crime against every young person graduating college with incredible amounts of debt and no future prospects but to become a cog in the service economy. And this economy is communism's ultimate endpoint, because we think of ourselves as these laudable capitalists, but our system right now looks just the way a communist system would or national socialism would. And that is the end point of this journey, I'm afraid.
National socialism, and the economy is in the tank, it's in the toilet, and it's heading lower. Does that mean that the Federal Reserve knows this? They know what these charts are, and this is why. Is this why they couldn't raise interest rates 0.25%? This is an emergency measure.
I don't know why they can't raise interest rates 0.25%, because it's such a nominal amount. But it's such a small amount. They're so afraid, so bureaucratic, that they can't even look to normalize rates a little bit, let alone to have normal rates, which would be 5%. They're afraid, anyone's afraid to touch the controls on a nuclear reactor unless the thing explode or implode before their eyes. But this is very similar, I think, to National Socialism. If you looked at Hitler, he employed a lot of brown shirts that were unemployed, and the TSA is exactly that, all of these government programs. And I've seen these government programs called the Affordability Act. I've seen these things pop up. Let's say Healthcare Affordability Act. There's now a FEMA Affordability Act for flood victims. That's doubled flood insurance rates for some people.
But let's get back for them not to how bad the economy is. It must be terrible.
It's morbid. It's terrible.
It must be terrible for them not to be able to raise rates. The 0% or 0.25% was an emergency measure. We're still in an emergency measure. Are you telling me we're still in an emergency?
We're still in an emergency.
We're still in an emergency?
We're still in an emergency, and all of the people that are watching these interest rates, that are paid to watch these interest rates, are dead men walking in their own vocation. There are people that are misemployed within our economy, and many, if not most of them, are involved in finance, insurance, Wall Street, or have jobs directly attributable to government. And I'm looking at the largest employer in my metropolitan area, and it happens to be a hospital. The next largest employer is an educational institution. The next largest employer, there is no real employer in my little area of New York City here, but really this country has no productive capacity. That multiplier is going down and down and down as we spiral to zero. The wealth creation vehicle. There's no wealth creation in the housing stock. You build a house to live in. It's not a machine tool. There is no way
anything else.
You can't produce anything else. And everything that's produced within our economy is rigged. So you have people like Warren Buffett that can buy a fully depreciated railroad and then monopolize on that. You have a drug company which can buy an orphaned drug, relabel it, repatent it for another purpose, and take something that costs 3 cents and mark it up to $700. That's the economy that we're in. And the end result of this fraudulent economy is a slower and slower and slower economy with fewer prospects for people to earn a living.
I was looking at you back in August. I booked you a long time ahead of time. Incidentally, you produced an 80-page presentation that you've put a lot of these notes into. We're just going to touch the surface. But when I talked to you back in, I think, early September or late August, you said, things ought to be really, going by then. Sure enough, the economy is not going well. They're afraid to raise rates 0.25%. 1/4%. The stock market is gyrating up and down. Are we headed for a brick wall, a crash?
Yeah, and look what's happening to the BRICS right now and the
No.
emerging
Are we headed for a
economies.
brick wall though? Are we headed for a brick wall in the economy?
Definitely, and it's good that you're using the term BRIC, because that's the part of the economy which is crashing first. The emerging markets, the BRICS, and that's on the edges of empire, and now it's imploding inwards. So we can look at all of these peripheral economies, and that's where the crash has occurred right now. You talk about crash, things exploding. People, when is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? It's happening right now, but it's not happening in the center of empire. It's happening at the extremities of empire. These emerging markets, these miracle economies, the few economies in the world which had productive economies, they've hit a brick wall. They've gone crash. China's going crash. We look at Brazil, crash. We look at the BRICS, Russia, crash. We look at the oil prices crashing down. And right now, so when it's, people ask you constantly, when is this blowing up? And the answer is, it's blowing up right before your eyes, right now, this minute. The domestic indicator is the declining velocity of money. But internationally, we live in a world without really journalism. So you don't know right now, but all of these miracle economies have hit a brick wall, the BRICS, and that is where the crash has occurred.
When do we start feeling the crash then?
Well, we're
feeling it now, aren't we?
We're feeling it now as a slow fester. We're feeling it now in this captured economy where prices are not allowed to go down, because that would, deflation, some elements of deflation would be a real stimulus for the economy. Having interest rates at 5%, giving savers a return on their money instead of stealing from them. If you had $1 million worth of savings 8 years ago, the government has stolen between $500,000 and $800,000 from you. If you have a pension plan that needs an 8% return, and they're only getting a quarter, or they're putting it into risk assets, they're investing into the BRICS, into stocks, emerging markets, and all of this captured money. If you have an oil sovereign fund that's accumulated U.S. bonds, U.S. treasuries, U.S. stocks, all of that money is being stolen. The future is being stolen away from you. And the end result now is war. And that's happening right now between Sunni and Shia.
We'll get to that in a minute. I want to talk about the Middle East and China, because I know you made some big predictions, as I said at the beginning of this. I want to talk about gold and silver really quick. So if we have this declining economy, are they going to go negative interest rates as they hinted? That was the reporting, and that's what I thought too. And also possibly QE4. They're already talking about QE4. Are we going to have, is gold and silver, are they a good investment in this kind of environment? A lot of people are buying it, and the premiums are going up, and the supply is going down, and demand is high. What do you make of gold and silver, physical gold and silver?
I think initially gold and silver will lose its liquidity. However, it will retain its value over time, and you'll be able to find liquidity in gold over time. For example, during the flood, I found that it was possible to sell here in New York.
You're in the Northeast, on Long Island. You had a big flood a few years ago.
It was impossible to sell silver, but it was very easy to sell gold. The problem was it was hard to find a price for gold. So I would anticipate that in this sort of deflationary downturn, if you hold gold, it may be difficult to liquidate. However, it will retain its value through whatever storm presents itself. And that's
go ahead.
And right now, let's say you have your money in a bank, and that is really returning negative returns to you. Gold is not providing you with a negative return. It's retaining its purchasing power relative to everything else. And I would think gold right now is mispriced. Gold is an amazing value right now, given the uncertainty. The real issue that you have is holding on to gold. Silver is hard to hold on to, literally, because it weighs pounds if you have a large amount of it.
This is why you said in one of the past interviews, have cash, have a stack of $20 bills.
Right.
That's the pad to get betwixt and between. Cash
Well,
Bob Moriarty said that cash is going to work really good.
What are you going to buy? You're going to buy real estate and be captured by your municipality. Let's say you buy a co-op.
Right.
You have a co-op, you owe debt on it. Then the co-op owes debt. Then you're buying into your municipality. They owe money. Then you could be taxed. What kind of asset is that? It's not a productive asset. We're talking about a multiplier again. There's a negative multiplier in real estate the way that it's structured.
They treat you like a milk cow.
You are a milk cow, essentially. If you buy a stock, what is the productive capacity of that company? And my guess is that most of them are just there because of collusion, game rigging, oligopolies, monopolies, and just the bastardization of law. So that's not an investment. Bonds, that's not an investment. So when you're left, there really is a Hobson's choice. You don't have a choice at all. The only choice you have is to buy gold and to hold it and to really hold it through this breakdown crisis, through this valley.
And to have some cash.
And to have some cash to sort of smooth the way. But right now, everyone is in your pocket. There's a desperation. As the velocity of money declines, there's a desperation to steal your money. And that's happening right now with every municipality, and there's 90,000 of them in the United States, 90 to 100,000 municipalities in the United States.
And I wanted to get to this. This is in your 80-page preparation that you did for this interview. We can't get to all 80 pages, but you gave 5 things that people should do, and that was number 1, spend less. Number 2, don't vote. Number 3, I'm making them look much simpler. Don't donate to the political parties. Hide and lay low is number 5. Tell me so normal people should spend less, dig in, and hunker down. That's what your advice is and don't participate in the system because it's a scam.
Right, exactly, and get that velocity of money down even lower. And that really is your only means of political protest against this inverted, totalitarianistic, fascist, communistic country.
No bankers go to jail. I know you got huge problems up in New York State.
No bankers go to jail. John Corzine didn't go to jail with MF Global. Hillary Clinton did something blatantly illegal. She is not in jail. And then you have just this clown show, Republican clown show, up on stage, where the guy that doesn't say anything is the most popular person, and you have an individual that destroyed 2 companies as your second front runner, and another fellow who declared bankruptcy multiple times as your front runner. So this thing is just bread and circus's clown show, and it's there to provide you with entertainment as the velocity of money goes down, as the BRICS hit a brick wall, and as the first part of World War III breaks out in the Middle East between Sunni and Shia.
On the other side, the Democrats, Bernie Sanders, a socialist. I mean, we're going to take money.
He's not even a real socialist. He's a Democrat. And guess what? Trump isn't a real capitalist. He's a Republican. And he says that he basically bribed his way into the system. He used to be on the other side, on the inside, but the other side, where he used to pay off politicians to get his way. That's the kind of corruption that you're living in right now. You can't even have the purity of an ideology, a capitalistic ideology or socialist ideology, take hold. There's only 2 ideologies in the world right now. One is consumerism, and all you do is buy a Vegetti for $20. It's worth 30 cents. It's a razor blade and a funnel, and that's your entertainment. Or you're in Islam and you want to blow someone up. That's your only 2 ideologies that are operable right now in the world. And it's a shame. There are no citizens. They're just consumers.
Let's talk about war. You've been hitting at this. People are like, okay, let them talk about war. Okay, let's talk about war. Let's start in the Middle East. I mean, what a freak show. I've been saying on my channel that Syria really boiled down to Shia versus Sunni. That's what the ISIS is, Sunni. That's what Al-Qaeda is, and Hezbollah is backed by Iran. That's Shia. Russia backs them. It looks like we changed sides. I've said that on my channel, that we basically cut a deal with the Shia, not the Sunni. And
Exactly.
Saudi Arabia is saying that, the United States stabbed him in the back. And wow, what a freak show. I mean, what is going on in the Middle East now? Russia's going to go after ISIS. And we're supposed to be going after ISIS. And they're driving around in our 2,000 Humvees over there.
Right, and eventually, we'll be at war against sort of this Sunni bloc, and we're going to have Pakistan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia are going to be the sort of allies, and then the axis may be, of course, China, Pakistan, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia are going to be on one side, and then we're going to have the U.S., Russia, potentially Iran and Japan.
Well, you said that about U.S.
side.
and Russia joining together, and what are we doing in Syria? That's one of your
There
predictions.
You go. And if you look at Israel right now, Israel is allied with the Sunni, with Saudi Arabia, something which is unthinkable, which I also predicted. If you look at 9/11, you look at 9/11 right now, that was Saudi Arabia, the Sunni. If you look at the Chechen rebels, that's Sunni. So from our perspective, from the U.S. perspective, we look at things from us being at the center of the universe, but we have to look at things from a parallax view, from the other guy's perspective. And with Islam, it's very difficult because of the subtleties. To us, it looks like an internecine war, or intercene war, I don't know how you pronounce that, but with two oil and vinegar factions of the same group. But there's a lot of subtlety that's going in there. That we don't understand. I don't frankly understand it because I haven't studied it. But if you look at a map, you could see Russia aligning with the Shia. You could look at the U.S. realigning with the Shia, Iran, as under the Shah of Iran, and now Iran. Hopefully they'll get the Ayatollah Khomeini out of the equation. And eventually, this will be our allies against Turkey, which is invading Iraq, which I said that was going to happen. I said that Iran was going to be the winner of the U.S.-Iraq war that in 2003. I said that was going to be the case. That has occurred. So I see us sort of as the economy declines, war is the ultimate destination. I can see Europe right now becoming an absolute positive basket case. With internal turmoil, and the only countries that are going to survive are those countries that are going to push back against Islam. But someone had said something very interesting to me, is that if you think about how a politician thinks that immigration is going to solve the great demographic problem of sort of this morbid economy. If we let Mexicans into the U.S., they'll be our younger labor force. They'll be able to pay off Social Security. Well, someone in Europe is thinking the exact same thing. If we let all these Islamic people into Europe, they'll be our younger generation, and they'll be able to support us in our old age. But today's, it's not going to be the case because this isn't like the 1800s where people assimilate. This is where people conquer, assimilate. They will basically absorb.
That's right. They're not going to be absorbed. They're going to absorb.
They're going to absorb.
Muslims are going to absorb in Europe.
Exactly. And it's
incredible. This is more war, right? I mean, they're going to push back. There's going to be violence, correct?
It's going to be violence. In some places, you're going to see civil war. I think in Europe, you'll see North and South civil war. You'll see civil war against Christian and Muslim, and you'll see just a tremendous, if you're a Christian, you are in a lot of trouble if you're living in a Muslim country. And it's going to be a very big problem.
Well, France is going to have a huge Muslim.
France will have a huge population.
So you're saying they're going to have a huge civil war eventually?
Eventually. Or
they'll
just
Belgium, another big Muslim country in Europe?
Maybe they'll become a big Muslim country eventually. But the Muslim populations are a very small percentage still. So it's possible to push back against this horde, but not for long. I mean, if you look, the closest analogy you could say is the Moorish invasions of Spain. That's the closest analogy that I can make in history. And there's a difference. When you look at Spain and you look at the Moors, there was in mathematics, architecture, wonderful sort of like this high point of Islam was taken from the Middle East and sort of transmitted into Spain, and you see this beautiful Alhambra and all of these beautiful pieces of architecture. Now all there is barbarism that's going to be brought from Islam into Western countries. That's all there is barbarism, and there's going to be warfare not only between the West and Islam, but also between Islam and Islam, Shia and Sunni.
Right now, we're seeing basically a continuation in Syria of the continuation of the war between Shia and Sunni. I mean,
exactly
basically what you're laying out.
Right, and this is sort of the on-ramp. We were talking about how this next world war was going to evolve, and the major power will be the U.S. and Japan and Russia, and then the other major power will be, China and its manifest destiny. But the on-ramp is Islam. The on-ramp to this great war is definitely this Islamic war, which we see underway between Sunni and Shia. That's how it connects. And it also connects into this idea of the declining velocity of money. Everything that we're talking about today is connected as if it's a chain of dominoes. The declining economy is sort of the on-ramp to this failure. And this is part, I think, of the reset, of the economic reset process, the geopolitical reset process. And right now in the U.S., we've sort of cocooned ourselves into this great totalitarianistic state. And there really will be no revolution in the U.S. because there are no revolutionaries. There's no one with an operable ideology. There's no aggrieved party. All we look back is our history, and we're even fighting a Cold War that doesn't even exist. We're trying to refight the Cold War. It doesn't exist.
Are we going to have a big reset before the end of the year? Are they going to come out and just devalue the dollar? Are they going to come out and have some crazy?
Well, I think the problem is with the dollar getting stronger in this deflation, and that would be even suck the wind out of all of these peripheral countries even more.
So they need to lower the dollar. They're going to try to do something to crash the dollar.
Crash the dollar, sure.
They are going to. That's your prediction. That sometime between now and next year, they're going to. I don't know. They don't want the dollar to be higher.
Right. I don't know if they can crash the dollar because if you looked at, in my presentation, I talk about the Roach Motel. That's sort of the major theme. Well, the U.S. dollar is the roach, the cockroach. And they were going into these roach motels. They were going into the BRICS. They were going into sovereign funds. They were going to the real estate boom.
And none of that money's coming back.
And that money has to come back eventually. But because it's been so misallocated, the money's been misallocated, it can't go back. You had John Stockman?
David Stockman.
David Stockman hit that key point on your channel. And in my presentation, I took a slide shot of him, and he hit one of these major elements, which is a key point, a key critical thinking point about this crisis. And I want you to listen to that presentation again. And you have somebody, let's say, Dent.
Yeah.
Dent. That's a thesis. Harry Dent. That's a thesis which was incorrect for a very long time, but the conditions for making that thesis valid are rapidly approaching.
So he thinks gold will be $300 an ounce too.
But let's say we're not thinking about gold correctly if we're thinking about that. What is better, $300 an ounce gold or a house that you don't own, that's a piece of zombie real estate that the state owns, that you have to service with every fiber of your being, and you now owe the government, the government has to let you live in your house as a favor. Would you rather have a house which you don't own and then be beholden to a totalitarianistic government, or would you rather have a piece of gold and have your own independence? This is a question
so
not
gold's
about
still
the price of
gold.
gold.
With the price.
Right. This is not about the price of gold. This is about the price of liberty. This is about the price of what your life is worth and who can dictate the terms of your value as a human being in a world where the value of human beings are declining.
Well, let's talk about China. You made some big predictions on China, and I was scratching my head like, what? Now, well, they're building all these islands in the South China Sea. You talked about that in a past interview about projection of power.
Right, and there's also a change. I talked about in the last presentation about China and Korea and China about Russia. And since that time, there have been two key things which have happened. We have actually Chinese leasing land in Siberia.
Wow.
So that's happened, and then we have Russia making claims to the Arctic region, which is, I said, there's tremendous amounts of oil in the Arctic area, and that is dovetails right now with China trying to move into Siberia, Russia trying to move into the Arctic regions, and then we have also Korea. Right now there was a visit between the Korean leadership and the Chinese leadership, the South Korean leadership and the Chinese leadership. And that sort of will make China sort of get closer to Korea, and eventually China will overtake Korea one way or the other, either using soft power or hard power. And that's sort of the key to all the shipbuilding of the world, to the world's naval capacity, to defeat Japan, to look at Nagasaki. Look where Nagasaki is on the map, and look where ships are built in Korea. And you'll understand that really China is a land power, but the way for China to become a sea power is through Korea and through southern Japan.
When do you think this war will happen between the rest of the world and China?
Well, with China, it's a question of whether or not they can stay stable internally, and that will be the trigger for war. Because we're looking at the BRICS. I said the BRICS, we're hitting the brick wall. The BRICS are crashing right now. When's the crash going to occur? That's happening right now. So as these economies unravel, the most dangerous economy to unravel is China. And as things get desperate in China, there'll be calls for nationalism, there'll be calls for war, there'll be calls for economic activity, and that will be when China starts to express itself more militarily. And we're seeing the early stages of that right now.
Let's wrap it up here with where do you think we're going to be by the end of the year? I mean, but people should just start really getting ready for this, for the economy hitting a wall. But people say, well, is my house, are we going to have inflation? My question back to them was, are you going to be able to have a job to make your payments?
Exactly, and that's why this idea of laying low is the way to go. Try to get out of debt, because those debts are going to become unpayable. Try to preserve your savings, because those savings are what is being stolen from you right now with zero interest rates or negative interest rates through tickets that are given out like popcorn on every corner of every street, through these police shakedowns of these municipalities, through school taxes. Get your profile as small as possible so that you're less of a target to hit. Eventually, I've seen this in other countries. I ran a machine gun nest in a communist country because the alternative was to pay up. They were there to just extort money from you. That's what's happening now. What's a highwayman? Right now, the government is a highwayman, literally. And we need to stay away from our federal and local governments to try to stay away from these sociopaths.
Lie low.
Lay low.
Lie low, preserve your capital. If you
preserve your capital,
prepare to hold it for a long time.
Right, and then redefine your values a little bit as well. If you go into a shopping mall, if that's your entertainment, well, I would say that's a time to rethink your priorities.
Well, Warren Pollock, listen, you did an 80-page report. This is a little something, too. You normally don't sell anything, but you have done hours of work on this, and I've decided to put this up, this 80-page report. Some of it is free in the after the interview section on USA Watch. So you folks watch it on YouTube, go to the right through and click on the link and go to after the interview section. And it's a report. Some of it's free, 5, 6, 7 pages is free of your work, and then there's 80 pages where you could go through and this interview is a snapshot of your work. And what is it, $9.99 or $10 for you to take a look at this hours of work, this 80-page research project you put together for us?
Well, I think it will give you a lot to think about, and there's a lot of things that are controversial within the presentation, which will be a real eye-opener for you. And I really talk about how we're so connected to the Soviet Union presently and to the Nazism within this country. And that's something I didn't want to talk about without having some sort of filter involved. The things that I want you to think about are so controversial that a lot of people are not going to like the result.
Well, we're headed for socialism, which is what Nazism was, what National Socialism was.
Well, I think socialism would be a better alternative than National Socialism or communism or capitalism, because we're looking at when we define things as good versus evil. But what if they're the same? What if the Soviet communism was the exact same as capitalism? What if people like Bush were the same as Nazis?
We did away with capitalism. when we did away with bankruptcy, when the big banks couldn't go bankrupt, then our capitalism.
What kind of capitalism is it if Warren Buffett can go as a communist?
That's cronyism.
It's cronyism. Is what it is. It's the same thing.
Warren Buffett and his fund should have gone bankrupt or been cut to
or Goldman Sachs. Or Goldman Sachs not
They
being
should have been gone to bankruptcy, and that's if you believe in capitalism, you believe in bankruptcy, and that's what we got.
In your communistic system, you had the elites, and then you had the zecs. The zecs were the people that were put into penal camps. The elite were, and then below them were the nomenclatura, the middle class, the people that were sort of ruling the Soviet Union. And these people all lived very well at the expense of the zecs who were put into prison camps and abused. And it's exactly the same. You have your Warren Buffett on top. You have your nomenclatura, the people that are working for the federal government, for the state government, your school teachers, and everyone else that's sort of in the middle that has a fake job. And a lot of people filling out paperwork for the federal government in these private companies. These people have fake jobs. And then you have your zecs, people that should be put in FEMA camps and exterminated. And that's exactly communism. And that's exactly what people are defending now when they think they are capitalists, because they can buy share stock in the stock exchange.
That is all in your report, your 80-page report. Of course, you just kind of went over, hit the highlights here in this interview, so you don't have to pay for it at all. But if you want a detailed report, you can find it after the interview section. Warren Pollock, thank you for all your hard work, and thank you for coming on and giving us your snapshot of the global economy and the geopolitical mess we find ourselves in the world. Warren Pollock, thank you for joining us today on USA Watchdog.
Thanks, Greg.